Okay, you guys, how are we? What do you think? I'll put some lights here. A couple of you were very concerned when I said I was going to add decor to the backdrop. I think you thought I meant I was going to change the backdrop. That would be way too much work, and also it's really nice, so I'm not gonna do that. We're just trying to add some like little interesting things in the background. I need a new faux tree because there is no like live trees that are gonna survive down here, so we're just trying things, you know, playing with it. All right. Hey friends, welcome back to the Spruce and Linen channel. I'm Janelle, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I decide how long fringe should be on a woven wall hanging. So let's get started. This video is brought to you by the Spruce and Linen shop, where you can find weaving looms, kits, tools, and supplies. Link in the description box below. All right, you guys, so today I've got my computer here and I'm going to show you what's on my screen in a moment, but we're going to be talking about how it is that I decide how long fringe should be. This has come with a lot of trial and error, like everything else I do in weaving. While I am like an art school graduate, I am not someone who works off of a lot of like technical things. I do a lot of things by eye, and so sometimes it does take time to develop your design eye, but that's kind of how I've worked. But I've sort of figured out a system, particularly for woven wall hangings, that I think works really well. Now, just as an aside, just as everything I like to say on this YouTube channel is that you do you. You may not agree with me on what I'm about to say, and that's totally okay. Your eye may be telling you that doesn't look good, and that's okay. So I just want to leave it really open that you don't have to do the things the way that I'm doing them. I'm going to show you this just in case you are really brand new to weaving and you want kind of just a go-to easy way to make sure that the proportions look pretty good. But if you ever decide that that's not working for you, by all means, give something else a try. I'm all about that experimentation and figuring out what you think looks good. Okay, so let's jump in here. I'm going to start sharing this screen so that we can talk and possibly be sort of roasting my old weavings, but this isn't to make any beginners feel bad. I kind of want to point out to you what I feel like I was kind of doing not so well in the beginning. So I'm going to start sharing this screen. All right, so this first weaving I am bringing up here to show you guys is one of my very first woven wall hangings. There's a few things for me that are not working with it. So these boxes in the corner here, just so you know, are just the proportions of the weaving, just in box form, so you can maybe see it a little bit more clearly. There's a few things that are not working for me with this weaving. The first thing is that all I can think of when I look at this weaving is that it looks like a drop waist dress, and I do not like drop waist dresses. And not only does it look like one of those, but it looks like one with a really short skirt, and it just feels kind of awkward, you know? And so I was trying to pinpoint the specifics of why it does. One thing is the proportions. The other thing is the fact that we have a very light weaving on the top and a very dark solid color fringe on the bottom. So the fringe really feels like it's weighing it down. So this isn't just an issue of proportion, it's also an issue of design and balance. The second thing is this string is burgundy. I probably wouldn't do that again. And it's way too long. I think I just made it the same length as the weaving, and probably if I did it again, I'll just kind of try to cut it off here so you can see, is I would have made it shorter like this. So it's also just like, it's adding this very defined triangle on a white wall, and I wish this was just an off-white string so it would sort of blend into the background. So here are the proportions you can see here. This is basically the opposite proportions that I currently like to work in. And again, this was just me experimenting, and that's kind of why it was weird. Because like to me, this fringe at the time felt so long because I had never made a woven wall hanging before. And now it feels really short. So in my opinion, the biggest thing that's going wrong here is that the fringe either needs to be shorter or much longer. I personally like to have my woven portion approximately square. Sometimes it's more of a rectangle, but then I like to have my fringe at least a few inches longer than that. And I'm gonna show you some pictures that illustrate that. but I just quickly want to grab these two boxes that I created here and show you what the opposite would look like. So if I flip this around, now you can see this is more the proportions I like to work in, is with this kind of square shape on the top and the fringe. Oh, I gotta let go of these boxes. You can see if this is the fringe, it is a little bit longer than the top portion. To me, this looks like a much better balanced piece. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next piece now, and that is this one. So this is another one from when I just started making woven wall hangings. This one is definitely proportioned better. I actually don't think it's too bad. I do kind of wish, again, that the fringe was maybe just like a little bit shorter, and then it would read a little bit more like the fringe or tassels on something like a rug or a pillow versus sort of an in-between. However, in this one, because I used that darker color throughout the weaving a little bit more, I think it is working better as a whole. And so again, you can see the illustrated boxes here. This is the fringe, this is the weaving. And if I go like this, you can see it's like a little more than half of the weaving. So I think it potentially would have looked better if it was just slightly shorter, and then we would have sort of that 1/3 rule. By the way, I don't really use the rules a lot. I do things by eye, and that's just what works for me and what I enjoy doing more. But if you want to work with more of those very particular parameters, the 1/3 rule could work. Let's move on to the next one, and this one I believe, oh yeah, this one is weird. This one's a little awkward. Okay. This one feels a little bit like it's like someone smushed it. Do you know what I mean? The weaving part is kind of wide and short, and then the fringe is following after that. If the fringe was a little bit longer, I think that could have looked better. And I just kind of want to illustrate, if I stretch this out, how it could look better. So I'm gonna take these boxes again that are proportioned the same as the blue as the weaving, the pink as the fringe. If I would have made the top portion of this a little bit longer, to me that looks better balanced, because again, right now, with the design, with the colors, all of it, it's feeling to me a little bit squished. So I'm not as huge a fan of this proportion. All right, now we're gonna go to one where I think the proportions are great. And these are my go-to proportions, which is why I wanted to share this, because if I'm making a weaving that's not necessarily for a particular space, these are the proportions I use. So that is something to keep in mind. What is the purpose of this weaving? Is it just supposed to be a general piece? It could go in lots of different areas. It's not excessively long or excessively short to fit in a very specific location. These are the proportions I use for that purpose, and they're my go-to because I think they look really great. So in this proportion, I make the weaving section almost a perfect square. Sometimes, and I mean even this one, it is slightly more rectangular, but it's always like mostly square and not like a really exaggerated rectangle, kind of like the fringe is a more exaggerated rectangle in this case. To me, this is just so visually appealing. It looks balanced, and this one especially with the design on top, contrasting the fringe on the bottom, it's really just balancing itself out. As you can see here on this particular one, the fringe is about 1.5 times the weaving section. I love these proportions. Sometimes I am working with a piece, and I'll show you that as well, where it is more like half weaving and half fringe. But as much as possible, I try to make sure that that fringe is at least a couple of inches longer than the woven portion. It just, to me, it always just looks like a better balanced piece. So this particular one, and shameless plug, you can find the tutorial to make this exact little mini woven wall hanging. I'll put a link up here somewhere. And this one, I think the proportions are just working really well. And so that is my go-to for when, again, I'm not trying to work within specific size constraints. All right, so next we have up this ginormous piece. I believe this one was at least 7 feet tall, something like that. So I'm still using kind of the same principles as the last wall hanging I just showed you, where you can see that this woven section is somewhat square. It is more rectangular, but it's not an exaggerated rectangle. I'm actually kind of counting, I'll zoom in here. I'm actually kind of counting the warp string here as part of the weaving, just because it is definitely a defined design element of the piece. And also the reason it was woven this particular height is because of the loom I was working on and the way I wanted to hang it. So just as an aside, because this piece was so big and so heavy, I really wanted to make sure I was hanging it directly from the warp strings, because that's going to be the maximum amount of strength for a piece like this, to be hanging from all of the warp strings. So as you can see here, it is a rectangle, but again, not an exaggerated rectangle. And then our fringe is obviously much longer than the weaving. And so in this case, this was actually a piece I made for my sister, and she had a particular size she wanted to fill here. I will just move these for a second. So you can see that there's this window here. So she was working with a particular width that she wanted, and also it was like nice and centered with the stairs so that it would really fit the space. Very customized. It's cut with the railing to just fit perfectly in the space. Totally custom. So she had given me sort of a length and width to work within. I included, you know, some of this hanging string was part of that. And once again, these proportions are really working for me. I think it was, you know, again, depending on the loom you're working with, I had to make it a specific height because I didn't have excessive amounts of height on that particular loom. And then I just used up the rest of the length in the fringe. So the fringe is super, super long. Again, I think part of what's working with this piece particularly too, just again as an aside, because yes, we were talking about fringe length, but I want to touch on why this works so well. I think if this was a plain colored fringe, it still would have worked, but I think it works particularly well because the fringe is part of the entire design. So in some senses in this weaving, this is reading as one art piece, not weaving fringe. Like when you do a plain fringe, it can read more like that, where like the fringe is just a vehicle in which to balance the top. This one is kind of like all in one, if that makes sense. All right, let's move to one more piece that has really different proportions, and that is this one. So this is another note I want to make. Is the weaving that you're creating for a specific space? This one I really created to be over top a dresser. I know you can't really see the dresser that much, but you can see what's on it. I wanted this to fit well over a dresser, or this would fit over a bed well, but it would be a kind of a more narrow bed because it's not a super wide piece. But so then I wanted to make it wider than it was tall. So in this case, as you can see with these boxes, it's about half weaving and half fringe. And if I set this here, you can still tell though that once again, I'll bring these up here where you can see them better. You can tell once again that the fringe is a little bit longer than the weaving section. But once again, because I have this mixed fringe, this piece reads a little bit more as if it is one piece versus if this was plain white fringe. Personally, if I had done a plain white fringe, I probably would have liked this piece a little bit better if the fringe was a little bit shorter. So it's reading more as that sort of like rug tassel effect and not this huge chunk of white underneath all of this interest. Again, these are all my personal opinions, and you might think differently. You might try something and it's opposite of what I'm saying and you might like it more, and that's totally fine. All right, let's look at one more piece, and that is these river river woven wall hangings and tree woven wall hangings that I've made. One more shameless plug, if you want to learn how to make this exact woven wall hanging, you can click here and head to the river weaving class, or you can also take, where can I put it? Here again? You can also take the class that just teaches you how to hang a weaving like this. So if you don't want to learn the river weaving section, just the hanging part, this one's for you. All right, back to it. So this one, as you can see, is more of this like my typical proportions, where the top of the weaving is almost a perfect square. The bottom is a little bit longer, a few inches longer than the top. And I love this proportion. This one, once again though, there is interest in design in the fringe, but even if that was all taken away, I think this length of fringe still works really well. And again, these are my particular go-to proportions, where square on the top, fringe longer than the weaving section. Do I have any more? That's it. I hope this was really helpful for you guys. I know it can be really overwhelming when you're brand new to weaving to kind of figure out those proportions. One more link I'm going to add here is for our 3-part mini woven wall hanging series. This is the go-to place for you to start. It's gonna give you all the basics without overwhelming you with too many different stitches. It's gonna be a nicely proportioned piece as well. And you can grab the kit from our shop. I sell a weaving kit that gives you all the right materials to make that project. And that's a really good starting point just in general, even if you just wanna watch the videos and not actually do the project. So definitely give my go-to proportions a try, and then try some other things. Make it a little longer, make it a little shorter, draw it out if you want to first, because I know it can be really disheartening when you make a whole piece and then at the end you're just like, I don't like these proportions. I always err on the side of giving myself a little bit of extra length in the fringe so that I do have space to either cut it off a little shorter or leave it a little bit longer. So as always, you guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, subscribe, maybe share this video with a friend, and don't forget to click that notification bell so that you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.